The phrase non-duality is a problem. It sounds like it belongs to people in robes, or to a retreat you'd have to take a week off work for. And most explanations don't help, because they arrive already full of words like awareness, presence, consciousness, the absolute. If you're not already inside that world, it sounds like a set of claims you'd have to sign up to. So I want to try something. I want to say what it actually claims, in plain English, in about 8 minutes, without any of that. Here it is. You assume your experience comes in 2 parts. There's you, in here, having the experience, and there's the world, out there, being experienced. And somewhere between the two, there's a line, a join, the boundary of you. Non-duality is the claim that if you go looking for that line, you won't find it. That's it. That's the whole thing. Everything else is consequences. Before we check it, 4 things it doesn't mean, because these are the usual assumptions, and they'll get in the way. It doesn't mean the world is an illusion. Nobody is saying the bus isn't real or won't hit you. It doesn't mean you don't exist. Something is obviously going on. You're here. It isn't a feeling you have to attain, some blissful merged state available after enough meditation. And it isn't a belief. You're not being asked to accept anything. You're being asked to check something, which makes it unusually testable for a philosophical claim. So let's check, but let's start somewhere with nothing at stake. Look at whatever's in front of you, and for a moment, drop the names, not the things, the words: chair, wall, window, hand. What's left is harder to describe. Color, shape, light, edges. Without the word, the edges stop being quite so obvious. Where exactly does the chair stop and the floor start? There's a place where one color meets another, that much is there. But that's where the chair ends? That was the word doing that, not the seeing. The room doesn't arrive pre-divided. The division comes in with the names. Nobody minds this, by the way. Nobody's identity depends on where the chair ends. It's an easy thing to grant. So now the same question about the biggest division of all. There's probably a sound where you are right now. Traffic, a fridge, rain, someone in another room. You'd say the sound is out there, and you're in here, hearing it. But look at what actually shows up. There's hearing. That's the whole of it. The out there is something you know, very reliable knowledge. You'd bet money on it. But it isn't something you hear. You've never heard the distance. The word arrived the same way chair did, and the division came in with it. And this is what happens every time you go looking. You don't find nothing. That's the misunderstanding. And it's the reason this can sound bleak when it's badly explained. You find experience, plenty of it, right here. What you never find is the line. The division between you and everything else has never once turned up in your experience. It's a thought about experience, one that arrives so early and so consistently that it feels like a feature of the thing rather than a comment on it. Which is the same thing the word chair was doing. just applied to the one place we'd never think to check. That's non-duality, not a mystical state, just the noticing that something you've assumed your entire life has never actually been located. Which raises the obvious question, so what? Here's why I think it matters, and it isn't abstract. Almost every form of suffering assumes the line. Embarrassment assumes a you in here, being seen by them out there. Anxiety assumes a self with a border that has to be defended. Loneliness assumes a gap. Resentment assumes somebody did something to you across a divide. Take the line away and none of that vanishes. I want to be honest about that. You'll still get embarrassed, but it loosens. It stops being a fact about the situation and becomes something you can look at. This is why people like Rupert Spira have spent decades on it. It isn't philosophy for its own sake. It's aimed squarely at the ordinary difficulty of being a person. There's a fair objection here, and I don't want to skip past it. You could say, this is wordplay. Of course you can't perceive a boundary. Boundaries are conceptual. The world is still out there whether or not you can locate the join. And that's a fair point, but notice it doesn't actually bite. Whether or not there's a world out there independent of all this, which is a real question, and not one I'm going to settle in 8 minutes, it wouldn't change what we just looked at. The line still didn't turn up. The division still arrived with the word. Because the claim here isn't about what exists. It's about where our difficulty lives. And the room isn't causing anyone any distress. The sense of being a small separate thing inside it, having to hold everything together, is. So you don't have to believe any of this. That's why I've put it this way. A belief is something you'd have to take my word for. And if you took my word for it, you'd just be swapping one assumption for another. This isn't that. It's something you can go and look at yourself. You just have to notice one thing at some ordinary moment, waiting for a kettle or sitting in traffic. Somewhere out ahead of you, the world. Somewhere back here, you. Have a look for where one becomes the other. Not to arrive anywhere, just to see whether the line is where you always assumed it was.